Okay, hello everyone. This board meeting of the Board of Education for July 27, 2021 is called to order. For tonight's meeting, any item that will be voted on has been posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tabs. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV Services website and on Channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. Please note we will be following recently updated guidelines for Multnomah County, which state, as of July 6th, Multnomah County Health Department strongly recommends wearing a mask when indoors around people you don't live with, whether vaccinated or not. This applies to everyone 5 years old and up. So, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome the board, the superintendent, staff, families, and guests. I also want to share a brief note my dad sent to me last week. Hi, Michelle. Needless to say, I'm super proud of your achievement as chair of the Portland School Board. I wonder what Grandma Thelma would say. I think of her courage and wisdom to use her lottery winnings to emigrate with 2 children to the U.S. Your mother, Sonia, has a similar story of how her family ended up in Portland. As you and your colleagues on the board make decisions, keep in mind how they will affect the families of the school children. Note, Guerrero equals warrior, de paz equals of or from peace. The combination should result in wonders for the children in Portland schools. Love, Dad. It goes without saying, as we enter into the new school year with a new board and with new leadership and the challenges we will surely face ahead, that we take my dad's advice and keep the families of the school children in the front of our minds. After all, that's why we're all here. Tonight, in addition to adopting a new mission statement for Portland Public Schools, we will be receiving an update on fall reopening. We will also consider tonight a resolution that more strongly states our concerns about the planned expansion of I-5 next to Harriet Tubman Middle School and demands for funding to move the school if the state goes ahead with the project. So we begin with the board consent agenda. Board members, are there any items you would like to pull for discussion? Seeing as there are none, excuse me. Ms. Bradshaw, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
I'm sitting next to the past chair here she's my spirit animal today. Board members, are there any items you would like to pull from the consent agenda? I think I just asked that. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Director Brem-Edwards moves. Director Lowry seconds the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there any board discussion on the consent agenda? The board will now vote on resolutions. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. The board will now vote on resolutions 6349 to 6352. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? The consent agenda is approved by a vote of 6-1, with Student Representative Weinberg unofficially voting
Yes.
And 6-0.
6-0, okay. I was just corrected. It's 6-0. For people that aren't in the room with us, I want to let you know that Director Scott and Director Constam are joining us by phone. So they're here. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you great. And I did vote yes, just in case you
And
didn't
we can't hear you. Terry?
You can't hear me?
Is Amy? I don't think Amy's.
Is Director Constam with us?
Can you hear me? Michelle, can you hear me?
It looks like Director Constam is not with us, and Director Scott, we can't hear you. But you have a beautiful background.
Yeah, it's a virtual background, but you can't hear me? No? Nothing?
Captions.
Me
You
neither.
can read your closed captions. Andrew.
And
Say again?
Director Constam is texting me. I don't have my phone with me, but it's coming through. We can't hear you either.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Thank you.
So did Amy
It
vote
sounds
yes?
like this, all of the sound just came on.
Did Amy vote
Can you-
yes on the consent agenda then?
Thank you.
Can you
Yes,
hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Oh, great, perfect. I did vote yes on the consent agenda, FYI.
Thank you. And Director
Can you
Constam,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now.
Okay, great. I voted yes too.
Okay, so the consent agenda is approved by a vote of 7-1 with Student Representative Weinberg, 7-0. Thank you. With Representative Weinberg unofficially voting.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I like how we didn't make that easy for you at all. Your first time through. I'm so sorry.
Luckily, I'm a professional. It doesn't bother
You're
me at all.
amazing.
So we turn now to student and public comment. Before we begin, I'd like to review our guidelines for public comment. First, the board thanks you for taking the time to attend this meeting and provide your comments. Public input informs and improves our work, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts, concerns, and reflections. Our responsibility as a board is to actively listen, and to that end, I would ask each of you to join me by tucking your phone away. Mine's tucked away at home, accidentally. But if you would just really do your active listening, we all know how to do that, so we can give our full attention to the people in front of us. Our board office may follow up on board-related issues related during public testimony. We request that any complaints about individual employees be directed to the superintendent's office as a personnel matter. And if you have additional materials or items you would like to provide to the board or superintendent, we ask that you email them to publiccomment, all one word, at pps.net. publiccomment@pps.net. And please make sure when you begin your comment that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. You have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll hear a sound after 3 minutes, which means it's time to conclude your comments. And I will hurry you along if you go over that time. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have anyone signed up for student or public comment?
Yes, we have Margot Logan.
Margot Logan?
All right, thank you. I'm Margot Logan, and I think most of you know me. I ran for the school board this year, and I prepared some materials. Did you guys get them already? Okay, good. I won't go into great detail. I don't really have a prepared statement at this point because I was busy making all my materials so that you could read them later, and then I could give them out to other people. I think the bottom line, after all the stuff that's gone on, that people talking about this expert, that expert, this Dr. Fauci, FDA, CDC, on and on and on now for a year. And China told us from day one, it's on their mask boxes, that masks are not for viruses. And so it just kind of befuddles me how that keeps going. And part of it is the Portland media. They all kind of bought into this whole thing. So the first 3 weeks in March when Kate closed down everything, I went out daily to all the ERs, the UCs, the MASH tents, the test sites, and nothing was going on. And I happened to have to go to my doctor at that time. I was the only one in the clinic. And so I asked the person checking me in, I go, well, you got that test site over there at Providence. And she goes, yeah, we can do 600 a day. I said, well, I've been going by, documenting. There's nobody there. And she went, that's because we're getting too many negative test results. So, I've documented for a year. The Oregon Convention Center had 3 electronic signs saying it was a COVID testing facility. I could never find it. I drove around and around. And then finally I put it on Twitter with my photographs. And then all of a sudden the Portland media had a news article that only OHSU employees go there. And I'm like, well, why would they have their employees drive down the hill to get a test? So then the first day of the vaccinations, they permanently closed that test site. So everywhere, it's like, where are they getting these numbers? And so I just kind of throw that out. And as the school board, I mean, you can read. You can read that the mask boxes say they're not for viruses. That it's child abuse to mask up children. You know, we've had so many things. It doesn't get into our Portland media news. You know, it's just all controlled. I talked to a coin news person one night, and they said they can't put anything on the news that isn't approved by national. So there's a huge thing going on, and we've got to protect our kids. They're traumatized. I hear more kids are being put on medication. You know, it just goes on and on. So please, please get the masks off the kids. Oh, that was good. That was good timing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes who we have signed up.
I'm sorry.
That concludes who we have signed up for public comment.
We do have. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So thank you for your comments. We appreciate you being here. And we have no other public comment. We have a student representatives report. Student Representative Weinberg, would you please provide your report?
Yeah, sure. So it's going to be pretty short today. First, just kind of, as I've been thinking about what I want to do in the next year, I know when I came on to the board at our swearing-in ceremony, I promised that I would be focusing on mental health. So the big buckets of work that I've kind of outlined at this point are policies. So that's both student and administration policies that kind of support the education of mental health or provide supports for students with mental health issues. Also practices as the second one. So what are mental health professionals doing in schools to help students? And then kind of the third is funding. So looking at our budget, once budget season starts, around how we fund student support services in PPS. And kind of a fourth kind of off to the side thing that might be something is also curriculum based for our students K-12, how we teach mental health, how we teach coping strategies in PPS. And the second thing, besides the mental health that I've been planning, is kind of a shout out to all students and I guess partially administrators in schools that a lot of district student council positions are going to be elected in the fall. So if you are interested in being more active in the district, knowing more about the district, giving your opinion to these wonderful directors, I really encourage you to run for your district student council position at your school. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jackson, if some students were interested in running, is there a central place where they can go to find out more information that you want to share?
Sure. You can email me at jweinberg, so that's jweinberg at pps.net.
I look forward to what you're going to bring this year and would love to partner with you if you need a board representative in the room every now and then, and would be willing to be a thought partner with you. Even though there's quite an age gap, but I might be able to be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to provide your report at this time?
Thank you, Chair DePass. Yes, I would love to. Good evening, directors, and buenas tardes to those staff joining us here this evening, for those in our audience live in person, and to everyone live streaming from home. I guess this makes my first regular SUPS report of, I guess, what we call the new school year season. So I want to start with some exciting news. It's always good to kick off with celebrations. If I could go to the next slide. I'm really pleased and proud to share that Mr. Gregory Garcia Jr. of Franklin High School has been named the 2021 History Teacher of the Year for the state of Oregon. This award, yes. This award is presented annually by the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History, the nation's leading organization dedicated to K-12 American history education. In 2021, parents, students, teachers, and administrators nationwide nominated a record 8,510 teachers for the History Teacher of the Year Award. And amidst a very competitive field, Greg Garcia Jr. rose to the top for Oregon. After receiving, let me tell you a little bit about him. After receiving his master's in American history from Western Oregon University, Mr. Garcia simultaneously earned his teaching license from the Oregon State University while designing a museum exhibit and docent curriculum as a public historian. In 2015, Garcia joined the Franklin High School faculty in Southeast Portland. As of 2021, Garcia teaches 4 advanced placement U.S. history courses at Franklin. Garcia's proudest unit is his public history project, where students build professional museum exhibits covering historical subjects of their choice. Franklin then becomes a historical museum, with students presenting their research to the general public. We're honored to welcome Mr. Garcia here this evening, and we had already started, so I didn't get a chance to personally welcome him, but he's here in the audience. I'd love to invite him to come down and share a few words with our directors. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
As indicated, I've been here for 6 years. This upcoming school year is going to be my 7th. It has been a spectacular ride. I absolutely love the academic freedom and focus on equity that this district gives students. Being a person who is Hispanic, Latino, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, most of my ancestry manifests in my nose, which you cannot see. But and also an individual on the autistic spectrum. The amount of support and equity focus, in addition to the academic freedom you give me as an educator, allows me to help students accomplish things that at the beginning of my career I did not think were possible. In addition to the museum exhibit project that Superintendent Guerrero pointed out, I also have students conducting professional oral history research projects with 2 entities right now. I have a student who is doing an oral history interview with the Royal Rosarians of Portland and the Oregon Historical Society. And I have another student who is doing an oral history project with the Museum of Popular Culture in Seattle with the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation. So being a fan of Star Trek, that's a big thing for me, but giving students, there you go. Live long and prosper, larga vida y prosperidad. E malama pono, that's Hawaiian. So with that in mind, in addition to thanking you all for your support, I would also like to invite you all to 2 of my signature activities that I do at Franklin. One is the museum that Superintendent Guerrero pointed out. The other is a Polynesian festival that I do through contacts that I have with Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities in the Pacific Northwest. We have NoHos that goes out and caters the event. Typically, we have a halau, which is a hula studio come and perform. There's activities, hands-on activities that you can do, Hawaiian Olympic Games, lei making. Some of our Micronesian students also contribute with their own cultural histories and the like. That happens at the end of May. The Public History Project Museum happens the last Monday of the school year. You are all invited, the logistics of which can be explained the closer we get to those points. But thank you very much. Muchas gracias, mahalo nui loa, and we'll see what happens from here.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your sharing your cultural background and your story, and the district is better for having you in it. And I can't wait for that Polynesian festival. I don't think I'll get to Hawaii this year.
Just to give directors a sense of what comes next, in addition to a $1,000 honorarium, Franklin High School will be receiving a core archive of American history books and a Gilder Lehrman educational materials pack, and a recognition at a ceremony here in Oregon. The 10 finalists for the National History of the Year Award will be announced on Thursday, September 9th, with the national winner announced later that month. So again, congratulations to Mr. Garcia. More good news. Directors know that I have appointed Dr. Sean Bird as our new Deputy Superintendent of Instruction and School Communities. We can clap for him too. Dr. Bird succeeds Dr. Craig Cuellar, who has accepted a leadership role in his home state of Texas. We wish Craig success in his next assignment and are appreciative for his leadership and many contributions during his tenure here at PPS. Over the last 18 months at Portland Public Schools, Dr. Bird has demonstrated admirable leadership and has played a critical role in various system priorities. In his capacity as chief of schools, he has worked with our school administrators to continue fostering a culture of mutual trust and collaboration with the central office. He's been an absolutely integral part of our COVID-19 response, going back to the very beginning of the pandemic here, just as he was joining us, in fact. He has been instrumental in our collective bargaining efforts with our labor partners, and he has regularly represented PPS school leadership to internal and external audiences. That includes making numerous media appearances during the course of the school year. Sean has also been a key supporter of and collaborator in our evolving racial equity work. Dr. Bird, just in the way of background, came to PPS with experience in multiple senior leadership roles at large urban districts, including in the Philadelphia and Los Angeles public school systems. Beyond his subject matter expertise and close to 25 years as an educator, Sean possesses an unflappable, we say, demeanor, a remarkably strong work ethic, and a tireless commitment to students and educators. He's exactly the type of person to help lead our continuing transformation as a school system. When I spoke to Sean about considering and taking on this new role, one of the first things he mentioned to me was his eagerness to get students and teachers back in classrooms full-time this fall to address unfinished learning and to continue working on tailoring our continuum of supports towards meeting our student outcome goals. Sean will share executive leadership responsibility for ensuring implementation of our new strategic plan, Forward Together. This will include a fuller integration of the Office of School Performance, the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Student Support Services to best execute on the system shifts called for in our multi-year roadmap. In a relatively short amount of time, Dr. Bird has established himself as an essential leader in our organization. I'm excited to see him take on this new and expanded role at PPS as we enter an important next phase of our transformation. And as is tradition, I would like to invite Dr. Bird to come up and say a few words. Sean?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Superintendent Guerrero, for allowing me to serve as Deputy Superintendent. I'm looking so forward to seeing kids back in school full-time this year, 5 days a week. As you know, I came here in January of 2020. Just 33 business days later, we had to close schools down. So it's been quite a ride so far. And I'm really looking forward to integrating the work of the Office of Teaching and Learning, Student Support, and School Performance to really be service-oriented towards schools as they begin again and full-time service to students. And I most look forward to executing the mission statement that you're going to vote on tonight and the strategic plan that accompanies that. So thank you again for your confidence in me. I look forward to continuing to serve the children of Portland. Thank you.
Please join me in congratulating our new
Thank you
Deputy
and
Superintendent.
congratulations. Or like we like to say, felicidades.
Well, continuing with good news to share, on the other side of the globe, where the greatest athletes in the world are gathered for the Olympic Games in Tokyo, we impatiently wait for track and field events to begin because our own Micah Williams, a 2020 Benson Tech graduate and current Oregon Duck star, easily qualified for Team USA and is now in Tokyo preparing and waiting for their call to run in the men's 4x100 relay race. So we just want to put a shout out there for Micah. Those races are next week, and we will, of course, be tuning in. All right, next slide. September 1st is fast approaching, and directors, we do have a fall reopening update later in the agenda. We remain committed to welcoming students back for 5 days a week, full day in-person learning in September. With updated guidance coming seemingly every day, in fact, even in the last hour, from local, state, and national public health agencies. We are in the last stages of final decisions on protocols for fall, including protocols regarding mask wearing. Just in the last week, we have seen updates from Multnomah County, the state via the Oregon Department of Education and Oregon Health Authority, and the CDC. Those updates strongly recommend people wear face coverings indoors, which is why we're also wearing masks this evening. We know that families and staff are eager to hear this news about our updated health and safety protocols, and we appreciate their patience. As with every decision we have made during the pandemic, we hold the health and safety of our students and staff as our highest consideration. We want to make the absolute best decision we can with the most timely information available, including public health guidance and consideration of fluctuating COVID trends in our area, versus being hasty to share any guidance or instructions prematurely. And we're also preparing to reopen for our youngest scholars as well. Our Early Learners Department, in collaboration with our P3 Advisory Council and school teams, has been working hard to ensure that every child and family experiences a supported transition into and through kindergarten. Terry, if you could move to our next slide, because I want you to see the children. This reimagined Connect to Kindergarten work includes an increasingly family-centered and engaging Connect to Kindergarten school events, as well as early kindergarten transition, or what we refer to shorthand EKT, another acronym to learn. Early Kindergarten Transition, that stands for. Our Early Learners Department, in collaboration with our Sun partners, is currently running our annual 3-week transition program for incoming kindergarten students and families in 16 school communities. We also have Kindergarten Ramp Up. Prior to the official first day of kindergarten on September 8th, all incoming K families will be invited to have a one-to-one conversation with their kindergarten teacher, and all incoming K students will be invited to a small group warm-up or practice day with their teacher and classmates. We have Launch to Learning Acceleration. The first days of kindergarten will be intentionally designed to build community, orient students to school, and teach and practice academic routines. We recognize that they haven't stepped foot on a school setting. Given that their transition to kindergarten was disrupted by the pandemic, first grade students and families were also invited to EKT this year and will also experience a modified ramp up and launch this fall. We encourage families who are not yet registered for kindergarten to visit our Early Learners Department kindergarten website, find their school, and get registered as soon as possible. Registering during the summer ensures that families will be invited to all of these Connect and Ramp Up opportunities. We are also working to enroll close to 900 3- and 4-year-olds in our district's pre-K and Head Start classrooms. Families can visit our Early Learners Department PK site for more information about eligibility, available programs, and the application process. And finally, On My Way to K t-shirts. All incoming K students will receive a blue On My Way to K t-shirt as modeled this evening by directors and staff to welcome them to the PPS family. So again, families, we highly encourage you to visit. Please visit our website or call your school for more information. We're very excited to welcome and support our youngest students as they begin their educational career here this fall in the Portland Public Schools. And I'm going to end by acknowledging 2 deep losses to our PPS community. All of us at Portland Public Schools are mourning the loss of Mr. Paul Edward Coakley Sr., a beloved educator and community leader who passed away on July 18th. Mr. Coakley was inspired to become an educator as a black man who grew up in the era of school integration in the South. He went on to mentor and inspire many others, including a number of educators and administrators currently serving in PPS. Mr. Coakley's wife, Carlos, is a longtime PPS educator. Their son, Dr. Paul Coakley Jr., followed his parents into education, serving as a teacher in PPS before moving into school administration. He's now the new superintendent of Multnomah Education Service District. Mr. Coakley's PPS career began in 1980 when he accepted a teaching position at Harriet Tubman Middle School. He then went on to serve as an assistant principal and principal at Tubman School. He later served as principal at Roosevelt High School and then Gresham High School. Throughout his career, he was known for his infectious joy, his evident love of people, and his clear passion for supporting students and staff. He consistently encouraged those around him to be the best version of themselves. He was often heard encouraging students to be on time, on task, and on a mission. Although he retired in 2002, Mr. Coakley continued to serve students, filling in as a substitute teacher, administrator, and principal mentor here in PPS and the greater Portland area, including in 2019 when he stepped in as interim principal at Laurelhurst School. I was honored, along with a lot of fellow colleagues, to attend the memorial service this last Saturday at Mount Olivet. I was joined by many, many others in the community, including a large number of fellow colleagues. Paul Edward Coakley Sr. had a meaningful, indelible, positive effect on our schools and our broader community. Our condolences go out to the Coakley family. He will be dearly missed. And finally, in our community, including the school communities of Grant and McDaniel High Schools, they are devastated by the unfathomable loss of Michaela Harris, who was a victim of yet another act of gun violence in our city. Just last month, Michaela walked across the graduation stage. There at Providence Park, she received her high school diploma. Michaela was so full of promise. She was known for her big smile and was planning to become a healthcare professional. Her loss is an utter tragedy. Ongoing gun violence is why we focus so much of our summer programming on violence prevention. We're trying to do our part, but we have to do more, all of us. As a school system, as a community, as a city, we have to do whatever we can to stem the unprecedented levels of gun violence in Portland. It is heartbreakingly too late for Michaela. Every one of her peers, every one of our young people are counting on us now. Our thoughts are with Michaela's family, friends, and loved ones. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Chair DePass,
Yes.
I have a quick question of the superintendent. Thank you for your report, and in particular, those two remembrances. Question for you: with the EKT activities that we've had, what is our understanding of what our kindergarten enrollment looks like next year, both in terms of numbers and in terms of where are they landing? Like last year's kindergartners, are they going back to kindergarten? Are they moving on to first grade? Do you have any street level intelligence on that?
It's a fair question, Director Constam. As directors know, most of our enrollment drop, which was several hundred students, was mainly experienced in the kindergarten level. Many of our families chose to leave their children at home, and that fits a trend we see across a lot of school systems. So the fair question is, are there indications that they'll be coming back? And if so, are they re-enrolling in kindergarten or first grade? We have our new deputy here, Dr. Bird. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
So kindergarten looks pretty good. It looks like we're meeting projections for kindergarten. And the students that, most students are moving on to their age appropriate grades. So if they were in kindergarten last year, even if they didn't attend our schools, many parents put them in programs, so they're going to be enrolling as first graders. We have been working with our school principals have been working with their communities for any questions that parents have had, but we've had very few requests for retention, and those have been handled based upon some data that we've collected for students, but we look pretty much on target. The seats that we're trying to fill are really the pre-K seats. There's, as Superintendent mentioned, several hundred seats available to fill for that, but kindergarten looks on track.
And Dr. Bird, is that 900 pre-K seats that Superintendent mentioned, is that more than we typically have? And if so, how many more?
That I'll have to follow up and get more information about that. I think it's really just about making the community aware that those, I think in talking with the early childhood department, it's about doing some more outreach of intimate community aware that those seats are available. I think that's more the issue. I think the number of seats is probably about the same, but I'll double check to make sure.
Thank you.
Staff will be sure to let directors know what the trend looks like after the 10-day count, year over year for kindergarten as well as pre-K. As you know, this is a real priority for us, early education, so we're beginning to ramp up expansion of those seats to more of our families.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'm new. Yeah, I'm new. Forgive me. what is the on track number? So when you say we're on track, like, are we talking 2,000 students? Are we talking, what is on track? I'm new,
Yeah,
and I like numbers.
I'll get you the exact number. I'll send a request to get the exact number. But when I asked what the trends are looking like, they said it's on target for the enrollment projections. So I'll get those numbers for you and send you it in writing.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? And if not, we have time now to hear conference or meeting reports. I personally have nothing to report in terms of, I haven't been to a committee meeting in 6 weeks or so.
How did you luck out?
Yeah. But we've got the charter committee, we've got intergovernmental audit, school improvement.
We need to make a report about the Council of Great City Schools dinner.
That's true, so yes.
I can just report that the executive committee of the Council of Great City Schools was in Portland and was hosted by our superintendent, who sits on the executive committee. And there was several of our board members, I guess 4 of us attended just a social gathering associated with that, and no business was conducted.
If I can add, Chair, Director Constam and I serve on the Council's Board of Directors as well. And for the viewing audience, Portland Public Schools is one of the 75 member districts that make up the Council of Great City Schools. It's a membership district. I do have the annual report for directors this evening, and then an addendum. And what it includes there are all of the services and supports that PPS specifically received from the Council, which is pretty impressive. Not only is it a support network for superintendents and school board members, but you'll notice in the report all of the role-alike opportunities that various senior staff have exchanging questions and learnings across the country. So I think you'll see the value of the Council's advocacy has a pretty significant return on our investment of time and resources.
Thank you for that. And I know that we've been members of the Council for Great City Schools for 51 years, and it's a valuable asset for us. Thank you. Do we have any other committee reports?
So I'm just providing a report. It's not from a board committee, but of a committee I serve on relating to the I-5 Rose Quarter project. And I know we're going to consider a resolution later on this evening, but I think it's worth reporting. And so I don't also need to include it when we have the discussion about the resolution. But over the last 2 weeks, this project got elevated up to the governor's level, and she's led a series of meetings over the last 2 weeks to try and find a way to get a win-win-win out of this project. I've participated in those meetings, and also from a staff perspective, we've been involved, and there will be over the next month another series of meetings on the next piece, and kind of subject to what the topic of our resolution tonight. But those meetings have been ongoing, and Courtney Wessling and also Dan Young have been involved on sort of the technical side of the project and trying to make it work. And so that's has happened over the last 2 weeks since we met. And I have no update from the audit committee because we have not met. Oh, actually, this is not from the committee meeting, but just for the rest of the board, I want to thank Chair DePass for leading the annual evaluation process of the independent auditor. So that's something for our new board members that we do every year. In addition to the superintendents, is the board is responsible for the evaluation of the independent auditor. And I want to thank Chair DePass for leading the process again this year. And it will come as an informational item, be sent to everybody so that you have the ability to see how our Office of the Independent Auditor did this year, and our auditor did as well.
Thank you so much. And I have a brief report about school board partners. I believe some of you know I took a 4-day retreat to San Diego for school board partners, where I met with school board members around the country representing LA Unified, San Francisco, Houston, Chicago, Minneapolis, New Orleans, Atlanta, Denver. We met with cohort 3, which I'm a member of, and some members of cohort 2, to do a mix of content-rich sessions and mixed with self-care. When I say self-care, I meant, we started the morning off with movement and setting intentions in a very very intentional way. Our sessions were on building anti-racist policy, budget conversations about how to build out a budget. We heard that there's school board partners will pay to have fellows attend Georgetown University for a certificate in education finance. It's a distance. It's a hybrid distance and in-person residency program. We also talked about best practices for superintendent evaluations, and just had a chance to network. Family was invited. So some people brought family members, and I feel very restored after having attended that for 4 days. Are there any other? I also understand we don't quite have the committee assignments. That's my responsibility. Chair Scott and I have gotten together and discussed it. I haven't moved it forward, but I will in the next few days. I'd like to have conversations with each of you before I start plugging people in. Moving on, we're going to talk about our new mission statement. Superintendent, would you like to introduce this next item?
Thank you, Chair DePass. Well, it's healthy practice for any organization to revisit its mission statement from time to time. A mission statement, as you know, it's a short, simple description of an organization's purpose. It should be clear. It should bring clarity to that. And the time is right for us to do so as well. We have a community co-constructed vision. We have a board-defined student outcome goals. We have a staff-developed strategic plan about to launch, describing a roadmap for accomplishing both our vision and our goals. So it's fitting that the board revisit the mission statement for Portland Public Schools. So I want to thank directors and Student Representative Weinberg for dedicating a work session this past Thursday to this important task of revisiting and updating our district's mission statement. I certainly appreciated the discussion, and particularly with the mission statement, the words we use, that we choose, they matter a lot. It might seem like a wordsmithing exercise, but it really is more than that. I also want to thank our Senior Advisor on Racial Equity, Danny Ledesma, who's here with us this evening, for helping to facilitate the conversation last week. And I want to invite her to review the questions we reflect on, give the audience a little bit of a flavor for the conversation we had, and to share with the public and the broader community the final proposed mission statement the directors arrived at. Danny?
Vice Chair Scott, directors and superintendent, thanks for having me here again. It was a delight to spend last Thursday afternoon and evening with you all talking about the development of a new proposed PPS mission statement. Tonight I'm going to try to, in the spirit of the Olympics, I'm going to try to channel Bob Costas and give you a really robust replay. But if I fail in my channeling, you'll let me know. So as the superintendent stated, on last Thursday, we all took the opportunity to, given the work that the district's been underway, at the district regarding our community constructed vision, we wanted to take the opportunity to see how we could have a mission statement that aligned to our vision and our vision statement. So the first thing that we did is we talked about what exactly is a mission statement. And on the next slide, we talked a little bit about that. So when we talked about what is a mission statement, we differentiated between a vision statement. We've talked a lot about our PPS reimagined vision, and that really serves as our North Star. And the statement in our vision statement is really about what is that we aspire to? What is the sort of future-oriented work that we're going to be doing to get to the goals and the aspirations that we have? A mission statement, unlike our vision statement, is really what is the action that we're taking now? How do we make sure that our mission statement is something that is compelling, that is inspirational, and describes not only our values and the approach to the work, but what we hope to accomplish right now? So we spent a lot of time talking about what is a mission statement, and in the next slide, we reflected a little bit about the current mission statement, which is every student by name prepared for college, career, and participation as an active community member, regardless of race, income, or zip code. So we took some time to reflect on that current mission statement, and while we certainly really appreciate and like that mission statement, we were searching for how we can continue to be even more aligned and to think about 3 elements of our proposed mission statement. We thought about our cause, every PPS student. We thought about impact, what we hope to achieve, and we thought about how do we really describe the actions? How do we make sure that we're really focused on the core work of the district, the approach in which we take in doing that co-work, and of course, my interest in making sure that we're doing it in a way that's disrupting the pernicious education equities that our system has. So if we go to the next slide, after a lot of time and discussion, we proposed the following, that we provide rigorous, high-quality academic learning experiences that are inclusive and joyful. We disrupt racial inequities to create vibrant environments for every student to demonstrate excellence. So in this proposed new mission statement, as we were working through to get to this proposal, some people call it wordsmithing. I called it creative synchronicity. We spent a lot of time reflecting on a couple of questions. We wanted to make sure that not only that the statement reflected our values, something that we could be proud of, something that would inspire us, but we also spent a lot of time talking about the perspectives that we all carry with us, the families that may not have been served, the families that may not have been served, and how we wanted to make sure that this mission statement was not only a statement of what we do, but also a statement that sets us apart in our aspirations and in our commitment and our work. So if we go to the next slide, we now are proposing a vision statement, and we have a vision statement that says a graduate of PPS will be a compassionate, critical thinker who's able to collaborate and solve problems and be prepared to lead a more socially just world. And that is certainly where we want to be. And in thinking about how we get there, we have a mission statement that says, in 2 concise and direct sentences that are easily memorizable as you think about a ride in an elevator, maybe our own elevator here, that we provide rigorous, high-quality academic learning experiences that are inclusive and joyful. We disrupt racial inequities to create vibrant environments for every student to demonstrate excellence. And at the end of our session, which was on time and on a Thursday night, I think we had a significant amount of consensus and reflection that said that we'd like to move forward and to share this with our community and to hopefully adopt it tonight.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated your role, as I mentioned on Thursday, in facilitating the conversation. I appreciated Jonathan putting all those pretty colors on the action statements and the impact statement. And I appreciate the robust discussion and what everybody that was in that session brought, because all we have is our own perspective, and it's the beauty of having a diverse board is, hearing from Director Brum-Edwards, how that mission statement didn't exactly serve her family, and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to ask now if anybody has any questions or further discussion about the mission. Are we ready to take a vote? Is there public comment on the mission statement?
Yes. We have Margot Logan.
Okay, Ms. Logan. It's the order. Yes.
And then public comment and then discussion.
Thank you.
Most of the time people.
Well, thank you again. I'm Margot Logan. You kind of just showed it all with this mission statement. And all the words that you used, not one person mentioned parents. And I think that's why the school was created, the public schools were created in 1854. They were not for parents. They were for indoctrination. And the best way to indoctrinate a civilization is to get hold of the kids. So that's what I was seeing, what I heard as we were speaking here. Not one person cares about the parents of these kids. I'm flabbergasted. And I know, in all the years, I have never met one teacher who knows the history of their profession. I finally met one last year on the recall Cape Brown tables. She was 92 years old, and she knew the history of her profession. And it was 1854, and it was a Democratic Congress, and they were worried about black people getting their freedom. And they also didn't like the Irish, who were also slaves. And so they brought in the German Prussian school system. The American elites loved Germany. In the 1800s, Germany was already doing human experiments, and the American elites loved it. And so they brought that into this country. And so if you know history, Germany and England, they got some royal connections. They like each other. But the English didn't like the Irish, and everybody in the Congress was afraid of the slaves. 1854 was also the year that the Republican Party started. And it was started to end slavery and to first stop the expansion of slavery across the West. And I didn't know this. I was a longtime Democrat. I studied history. I didn't know this. I knew some things didn't make sense. And we have Planned Parenthood. It's black genocide. There's no question. What I'm happy to see is that there are 3 black people on the school board. I think 1 black person can be token, but if you have 3 black people, this could be a game changer. And we have a Christian pastor on this school board. I am so happy about that. I just can't tell you. So, I come now kind of forward into thinking that maybe something can change now with this particular public school board. So, but when you don't pay attention to the parents, it's not right. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 6353, resolution approving a new mission statement for Portland Public Schools?
So moved.
So moved?
Second.
We have 2 people moving, Director Constam and Director Brim Edwards, and Director Hollins. Seconds. Is there any further discussion tonight? So the board will now vote on resolution.
I just want to say something. I so appreciated the discussion we had on Thursday night, and I loved the way, through the time that different things came up as a group, and I thought it was really fascinating, especially when at one point we had Black and Native students named in the mission statement, and then that we talked about how that felt tokenizing or paternalistic, and I think that really is the mark of our diversity as a board, and that conversation on Thursday just filled me with such hope, because we are very different and we use language differently, and we were able to have this wonderful, deep, robust conversation and really talk about who is PPS, what matters, and how are we going to lead. And so I just want to thank you all for that incredible evening. It was my birthday. It was a great way to spend my birthday, and I appreciate especially on the staff, Ms. Ledesma and Chief Garcia, for their leadership and work with that. It was a very hope-filled, wonderful conversation to get us to this place, and I'm excited about the next 2 years on the board and what this board is going to do for our students at PPS in partnership with our superintendent and our staff.
Chair, if I may also, I mentioned earlier, I also appreciated the conversation, and that includes the input that Student Representative Weinberg also made to the conversation. I think when you see that last slide, this new mission statement is a nice accompaniment to the vision statement that we worked on with our community. It's one that calls out explicitly preparing our students to be critical thinkers, a skill set that, is so absent in its modeling in our contemporary times, especially when we say to lead a more socially just world. That's exactly the opposite of the Prussian origins of the American public ed K-12 system. And so this mission statement, what I appreciate about in the second statement, especially aside from being inclusive of all of the diverse learners that we have a responsibility for serving, it talks about those vibrant environments, and that means ensuring we have, the way I interpret it, all of the equitable supports that they need to experience success. So I think you don't find a lot of mission statements like this, so I just want to say it makes it a little easier when a Board of Education provides the kind of air cover through a mission statement and a vision statement and a mission statement that are this explicit. I don't think there's a lot of school systems often take the courage to codify it in the same way. So thank you.
Chair DePass, can I just add my voice?
Please.
Thanks. I want to make sure you could all hear me. I really appreciate the comments so far and overall this mission statement. And what I'm really proud of is that, we include very explicitly in the mission statement that part of our mission is to disrupt racial inequities, to create those vibrant environments the superintendent was just talking about, so every student, can demonstrate excellence. And, there's a lot going on nationally right now. And, honestly, I think we should be really frank about it. It's a pushback on this attempt at bringing racial equity into the conversation, and what we're seeing is that blowback, is that pushback, and I think I'm really proud of this district for being willing to step into that space, and we are going to continue that focus on racial equity, and we're going to continue that focus, on serving all of our students and doing it, through a racial equity and social justice lens. So I'm really glad we're there. I think it's really important that we're adding our voices to that conversation. And then I just can't let it go. There were some really inaccurate things said just about public education and the purpose. And I just think it's really important to note that the purpose of public education is not to indoctrinate students. It's not to bring propaganda to students. It is in fact to educate children. It's to help them become well-rounded individuals. It's to help them master academic content while also focusing on the whole child and help them all become, good citizens, good residents of this country. And I just think it's really important the benefit that has come from public education, that in the face of some of those attacks, we need to continue to be willing to stand up for public education as well.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Do we have any further comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments, just to be primarily to be additive to other comments that made tonight. So I appreciate the viewpoints that have been expressed. I think I wanted to just say that there was a comment made that this doesn't include parents, but I found our discussion the other night really reflective, I think, of a lot of our experiences on the board and staff as parents, and what our experience has been, and what we hope for our kids and other children in PPS, and that it was with that in mind and with the sole focus. I'm really proud that the mission statement is focused on students, because that's what we're all about. And I also really appreciate, there's lots of parts of it, I like the whole thing, but I want to call out the joyful, inclusive, and high quality academic learning environments, because I think sometimes we sort of get to the altar of like high quality academics, and that's what it's all about, and then we just grind out students, and it's not joyful and it's not inclusive. And but on the other hand, we could be joyful and inclusive, and if our students aren't learning, we're not doing our jobs either. So I love that this is blend of exactly what our kids, I think, need in order to come out of our school system as we imagine them in our vision statement. And I love the word that we have joyful in that, because we want our kids to love to come to school. And if they don't love to come to school, that's not going to be a good thing. So I'm going to be very supportive.
Thank you. I also appreciate just the, the seriousness of like crafting a mission statement and then mixed with the levity that was in the room. I'd love to have more meetings like that personally. The board will now vote on resolution 6353, a resolution approving a new mission statement for Portland Public Schools. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. Any abstentions? Resolution 6353 is approved by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Weinberg unofficially voting.
Yes.
Thank you. That felt so. We're done with that. Okay, we're gonna. Yes, we can clap.
More clapping.
There's more clapping. It's okay to clap if I'm sitting here. We need more of that. We're going to next to get an update on fall reopening. Superintendent Guerrero, would you please introduce this next item?
Yes, Chair DePass. You're going to start to hear many more details, but leading tonight's fall reopening update is our Chief of Staff, Jonathan Garcia, who's going to walk you through a short deck here.
Superintendent. Good evening, directors, student representative. Tonight.
Good evening.
Let's go. All right. So tonight we'll be providing you with two updates regarding fall opening. First, we'll be providing an update on the shifting health and safety guidance from public health officials, notably the emerging guidance on mask K-12 school, guidance on masks in K-12 school settings. Included in this update will be notable updates we want you to know about as we finalize our set of health and safety protocols for the fall. Secondly, Brendan Martinek, our Chief of Student Support Services, will provide you with an update on our online learning academy, including what families and students can expect if they choose to enroll in the fall. Next slide. So Superintendent Guerrero, as Superintendent Guerrero, the Board of Education, and the Oregon Department of Health have all stated that our schools must provide full-time in-person education for all students every school day for the 21-22 school year. We are excited to see our students and our staff in schools this year, and I know directors and our superintendent will be out there on the first day of school, welcoming with joy and excitement the return of the new school year. Next slide. We also know that in Multnomah County, we have seen an increase of vaccinations. So over 577,000 people have, sorry, next slide. There we go. So, no, slide before, sorry. Thank you. So, as we know, there has been an increase in Multnomah County. We've continued to see an increase of vaccinations in adults and folks over 12 years of age. So right now in Multnomah County, we have over 577,000 people, or 71% of people who have received at least one dose, and close to 530,000, or 65%, are fully vaccinated. Of course, while we're not a public health agency, as a school district, we're doing our part. Ooh, sorry, this mask. We're doing our part in hosting free COVID-19 vaccine clinics. And in fact, thanks to our friends at the Portland Fire Bureau, this Friday, July 30th, from 8:30 to 1, we will be hosting a first dose clinic at Franklin High School and Lane Middle School. So please look out for information on our social media for more information on that. We're also monitoring the timeline for vaccine availability for children under 12 and are in early conversations with healthcare organizations to prepare for and plan to support mobile clinics for when that moment does arrive. And still, with the vaccine available to any person for free, we're seeing another national surge due to the Delta variant of COVID-19 spreading. And today, Oregon health officials reported more than 1,000 COVID-19 cases in Oregon, saying cases caused by the Delta variant are spreading among unvaccinated people and communities. Here in Multnomah County, we're also seeing an increase in the 7-day average of COVID-19 cases grow. Next slide. So as we prepare for fall reopening, we continue to monitor COVID-19 and the Delta variant while preparing for multiple layers of protection, including hand hygiene, air filters, and circulation, regular cleaning and disinfection, and of course, promoting access to vaccine against COVID-19. Many of you will remember the Swiss cheese model of pandemic defense, which essentially recognizes that no single intervention is perfect at preventing the spread of coronavirus. But if you bring many of them together, it helps with supporting the prevention of spread of coronavirus. Consistent with our practice of following public health guidance through the COVID-19 pandemic, and in consultation with public health experts, we continue to plan for layered health and safety measures that will help us maximize our shared commitment to full in-person learning at PPS. Next slide. In just 1 month, public health guidance on masks for schools has shifted significantly. And in fact, while we are close to full alignment on guidance on masks for K-12 schools, local, state, and national health officials are quite not there, and that has been the challenge for superintendents, for school district leaders, and for school boards. Instead of providing firm or consistent guidance, we as educators have struggled to glean consistency from public health, making decisions sometimes politicized and challenging. And in fact, in just the last 24 hours, Multnomah County announced their countywide guidance update while continuing to recommend, like the American Academy of Pediatricians did on July 18th, face coverings for all staff and students to wear masks while indoors in schools. Next slide. And earlier this morning, the CDC updated the guidance, shifting to a more restrictive guidance, and one that aligns to our local Multnomah Public Health Agency recommendation. And just right before the board meeting, the Oregon Health Authority announced an update to their mask guidance, recommending masks indoors for all individuals. I've connected with state leaders who plan on updating the RSSL resiliency framework so that it too aligns with CDC, Multnomah County Health, and the American Academy of Pediatricians. Next slide. So as you can see, we are seeing stronger alignment from public health experts and officials that everyone in K-12 schools wear masks, regardless of their vaccination status while indoors. And as I mentioned, leaders at the Oregon Department of Education have shared with me just right before this meeting that the governor, ODE, and OHA will be updating the resiliency framework. With this presumptive shift from state officials, we will have a national, state, and local public health alignment that everyone in K-12 schools wear masks, regardless of their vaccination status while indoors. As the superintendent shared in his report, we do not have a firm position on mask wearing yet, but with the consistent guidance from public health experts we're seeing in the last few days, we are confident that PPS will continue to set up layered health and safety measures so that we can maximize our shared commitment to full in-person learning at PPS. Next slide. So as you can see by this timeline on your screen, next Monday, we look forward to sharing with you our set of recommendations and our rationale on health and safety protocols for fall opening. We're actively coordinating to schedule and prepare for a PPS board work session with public health experts and officials. As we've said many times before, PPS is guided by public health experts, and we hope that this work session will give you an opportunity to hear directly from public health experts and officials, and of course, ask questions directly. Lastly, we've been coordinating with Chair DePass and Vice Chair Scott to place our health and safety recommendations at the next regular scheduled board meeting agenda on August 10th for your consideration. Next slide. We also know that there will be families who choose to learn from home this fall. We will make available our online learning academy. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brenda Martinek, our Chief of Student Support Services, who can share an update.
I have a quick question
Yes.
about masks and with all these new guidelines and the stuff from Multnomah County. I know that our high school students who are back at summer school right now have not been masked. Are we going to continue having our high school students who are in summer school unmasked now? Because I know that's what RSSL says, or are we going to make that change given what Multnomah County has asked of us?
Thank you, Director Lowry. So earlier today, we did announce and shared with our community that consistent with our practice of following public health guidance, starting today, we are requiring all PPS students at high school summer programs to wear masks while indoors. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda Martinick to talk about Online Learning Academy.
Good evening. Thank you, Chief Garcia. Good evening, Superintendent, Chair DePass, Vice Chair Scott, Board of Directors, Student Representative Weinberg, our community members who are here with us tonight, and in the crowd, the virtual crowd, students and families. It's actually great to see you in person tonight. I'm pleased to update you on our Online Learning Academy, which we will open in the fall. This is a comprehensive K-12 learning instructional program. Next slide. So students are going to learn independently and collaboratively, and they will be guided by our own PPS licensed teachers and staff. This is different from our comprehensive distance learning that we did last year. So I do want to be clear that it's different, it is comprehensive, and it will be a virtual Online Learning Academy program. So what I wanted to go over a little bit was about the criteria, the lottery, our outreach efforts, and then just our hiring status. So our criteria, what we have said all along is that if a student has health-related issues that would put them at a higher risk of some serious health issues due to COVID, that we really want to make sure that we are offering students an online learning environment in order for students to be able to participate in Portland Public Schools. So we have developed some criteria for our Online Learning Academy, which would be for students with health-related needs. It's also for students who have extenuating medical related issues that could be mitigated due to an online learning environment. The other thing we have done is we have opened it up on Monday. We sent an email to all families letting them know that if they are interested, they can go ahead and apply. We will use this criteria in order to provide spots for our students. The application deadline is July 30th. That is a very soon timeline. It's in 4 days. And so if you are interested, there is the website there, which is ola.pps.net. You can get a lot of great information from there, FAQs, the application process. And if you have any concerns or want to talk to somebody, we do have a variety of ways in which you can reach out to us. So our outreach efforts, I just wanted to update you. We did do an outreach and an interest survey to over 15,000 families who participated in our comprehensive distance learning all year last year. Out of those, we personally called over 1,000 families. We prioritized families based on students who had participated with our culturally specific partners throughout the year, and also were in comprehensive distance learning 100% of the time last year. So we assembled counselors and worked with our community providers to do this outreach effort to ensure that we were really serving our most marginalized students, specifically focusing on our BIPOC students. What we've also done is on the website, we have a number of frequently asked questions. We've held 3 parent informational sessions, and with each of those 3, we have included all of the questions and have tried to answer as many as possible, and that is on the website. Our hiring status right now, we're really excited that we've hired almost 95% of our staff for OLA, as we love acronyms here. So, so our Online Learning Academy, it's very exciting that we have that, and we are including some wraparound services that I'll talk about in a minute. As I said, our application deadline is July 30th. If we have not filled all of our spaces, we will continue to keep the application open. If we have not, though, we will close the applications on July 30th, and we will start the lottery process. Next slide. So I did want to give you a little bit of details and talk a little bit about the supports. So we have separated into a K-5 and a 6-12 programming model. It will include live instruction and some self-driven work. Our K-5 and our 6-12 supports will be a little bit different. We will have live instruction and whole group classrooms for our K-5 students, because we do believe that having a live teacher in front of students, especially our early learners, is crucial to continuing to establish that rapport and that relationship with students and families. With our 6-12, we will have whole class sessions. A lot of it will be asynchronous or self-driven work. So that's a little bit of the difference. In our 6-12, we will do 4 courses at one time. So a student could receive a full year of coursework in 18 weeks. This is similar to our 4x4 schedule in our 6-12 CDL program last year. It was highly effective, very successful. Many students were very appreciative of the 4x4 schedule. I do want to talk a little bit about wraparound services. What we have understood is during this ongoing pandemic, it's caused an increased issues with depression, isolation, suicide ideation, and a number of other concerns. So we wanted to ensure that students, all of our students, even in our online learning academy, are able to access and benefit from the supports and resources that we can provide in a virtual environment. So we will have counselors, social workers, family engagement specialists, and then our technology support staff. For students who are on a 504 plan or have an IEP, since this is a different learning environment, we will review the 504 plans or the IEPs with the families in order to look at the services and supports that students need in a virtual learning environment. And I do want to share, because this was a question at many of our parent meetings, is about services for students with special needs. And it is a virtual learning environment, so all of those services would continue to be provided in a virtual way. We also will be providing services for our talented and gifted students and services who qualify for ELL services. Next slide. I know you guys always like to see schedules and sample schedules, so I did want to go ahead and show you 3 different samples, one from elementary, middle school, and high school. As you can see, our AM sessions will have whole group live instruction or whole group live work sessions, as well as that self-driven work. The PM sessions will have some small group work. This is a time for individual tutoring, office hours, asynchronous learning, and then also a time for wraparound services to be provided. Students will still continue to be able to access meals at their neighborhood schools. We wanted to make sure that that was a key component, even if they are continuing to be having services in a virtual environment. So lastly, I just want to thank all of the staff who have dedicated many days and nights over the past few months in order to ensure that PPS is able to offer a virtual learning environment for students with health-related needs that would have prevented them from coming back to school in the fall in person. So I'm going to thank you for your ongoing support of our Online Learning Academy, and you can let me know if you have further questions. Thank you.
Everybody has questions.
Yes.
Do we want to start down the line? Director Green?
All right, I have a host of questions. So I'm gonna rattle them out.
Yep.
I hope somebody else is taking notes. because I don't want to pause in between. You said the online academy is different. And from what it sounds like, I'm wondering how. Because if they're a PPS student already, then why do they have to reapply? Will they no longer be a PPS student? So I'm curious about that. The application deadline, why do they have a deadline if they're already a PPS student? See, I'm having a lot of questions because it sounds like there's going to be a disconnect from you being a PPS student and now you're this online student. So it's almost sounding like you get to choose to be one or the other, but you're not going to be able to be both, is what I'm looking at. The hiring status, are these teachers currently, are these PPS teachers, or are we going out to get new teachers? If so, where are we getting these teachers coming from when we're already struggling to get teachers within our schools right now? So that's another question that I have. And then where's the budget coming from for this OLA Academy, and how did that get put together? And then how is the technology support going to be different from the technology support that we have already within PPS? Are they the same staff members? And if they're not, then how do we have new money for technology people when we didn't have money for the technology people that we have right now? And then meals, how are they going to get meals from the school if they couldn't get it before? So do we have transportation money now that we're actually sending money from we can pay somebody to drive meals to these people's homes, or they're expected to come to the schools because we didn't have money to get kids meals before? So how do all of a sudden we got money now to get them? So I stopped typing because I just said, you know what? I'm sure there's smarter people in the room than me, but I need some answers.
Great.
I'm confused.
Those are great questions. That is 6 questions, to be exact, that I was able to catch. So first, students are still PPS students. You actually have to be a PPS student in order to apply for this program. This is a program of choice. We have multiple programs of choice in the school district. And so that is by application. And so what parents do is they make a choice of what services they would like to choose while they're a PPS student. Some parents choose our DLI programs. Some will choose our Online Learning Academy program. So we have limited capacity at all of these programs. Therefore, we provide a criteria, and then we do a lottery system by criteria. If we have more students, then we have space available. Okay. So that's the first one, program of choice. Second one, I believe, was budget. So we are using our ESSER dollars to front load this program because what we're doing is we are starting it small based on the pandemic and the COVID needs of our students. And so we're using the ESSER dollars. Later on, as we look at enrollment in this program, we will transition the ESSER dollars into ADM for students, and that is an allotted amount of funding that is for your average daily membership of funding. So that's how we will transition the money forward.
So you said COVID dollars?
It's ESSER.
That's COVID dollars? Mm-hmm. And so with COVID dollars, are we now creating a long-term foundational system that we're going to use temporary money to, and then what's the sustainability plan?
So the sustainability plan would be our ADM dollars. So currently students, so our students receive funding for students based on their average daily membership. And then what we do is we use that to support our schools and teachers and pay for all the things. And so what we'll do is we're front loading this currently due to ESSER and a very short ramp up for an Online Learning Academy. What we didn't want to do is we didn't want to pull staff from other schools in order to do this in a really short time period. So we're front loading that, knowing that we will have to rebalance staffing based on how many students that are coming into our Online Learning Academy in the future years. ESSER dollars go for 2.5 years, I believe. So we'll continue to have a sustainability plan and transfer or transition the dollars from ESSER dollars back into our general budget in years to come.
I want to make sure that we clarify the acronyms that we're using. Most of you know that the federal government has made available to American public K-12 a number of emergency resources, especially as we confront COVID. And so ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. There was multiple rounds. So if you hear ESSER 1, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, or you might hear American Rescue Plan has some elements as well. These are multiple funding streams that are coming directly to states for distribution with particular constraints or guidelines for which districts have to prepare plans for how they're going to expend them. And so, and some of these are very time defined for us to use. For example, there's some set of monies that we had to use by the end of September that are intended for unfinished learning, for summer learning, extended learning opportunities, for setting up virtual learning, for example. And so we've had to be very careful about all of the funding streams, their various restrictions, with all of the supports that we want to provide for our students. And so you're hearing Brenda talk about, and it was a great question around, well, how are we paying for these things? Well, we're using the federal relief dollars for that intended purpose. This is exactly the kind of activity that the US DOE and others were hoping that we would be engaging in, and they're one-time monies.
So you asked two more questions. One was about meals and one was about technology. So with our meals, what we have done since the beginning of the pandemic is we have had different meal sites. What we then did is transition to, or we are transitioning to all of our school sites to offer meals for students. What we will be doing, and we are continuing to work with nutrition services, is to figure out a way for those students, probably on a weekly basis, it might be a bi-weekly basis, be able to come, families would come to their neighborhood school and be able to pick up meals for those students. So the plan isn't fleshed out yet, but that is, we understand the need, and we know that all of our students need to receive those meals. The final question was around technology. So we do, because we have the federal stimulus dollars, we have put it in our budget to add technology specialists to our Online Learning Academy program. Because it's a virtual learning environment, we do have to have a number of staff that are able to problem solve with families, with students, with teachers, making sure that the technology is working. Because for our students in an online learning academy, that's really the pencils and the paper and the desks that we need to make sure that students have available so that they can learn. And so for the OLA, or the Online Learning Academy, that's the technology piece. Thank you.
You're free to ask them, but are you satisfied for now?
For now, yeah. I'm gonna wait. There's more people in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Director Lowry?
You talked about the hiring process, and I was wondering, are those the teachers that we've hired, are they part of PAT? Where are we finding these folks? Are they going to be here in Portland? Are they teaching from all over the country?
So they are not teaching from all over the country. They do have to be in the Portland, Vancouver, the metropolitan area. We do have the Holiday Annex that serves virtual scholars. This will also house our Online Learning Academy under the umbrella of our Virtual Scholars program. The teachers, some of the teachers are current PPS employees, and some of the teachers are new teachers. What we did is we worked with HR, and we looked at the job descriptions, ensuring that they had that virtual learning component. The amazing thing about our teachers being in comprehensive distance learning is a lot of teachers have been catapulted in to a virtual learning style, and how they teach now is much different than how they taught in the past. So we've really encouraged teachers that are really inspired by teaching this way to apply. We have amazing applicants, and again, some of them are internal and some of them are external. So we're really excited about it. Not all are PAT members, some are non-RAP, admin, classified, PFSP.
Are some of those folks people with underlying health conditions themselves? Are we seeing any uptick in folks who maybe want to do online because being in a classroom is maybe not the best option for them?
Everybody was encouraged to apply. During our hiring process, we can't ask for confidential information, so we would not know if a person would have to go out on leave or something like that. If they divulge that information, that would be the only way that we would know, but otherwise that would be a breach of confidentiality.
Thank you. I had a quick question about the home, the coach, and was also looking at the meal times, and some of the meals are only 30 minutes, and I was wondering how a student would get to the school and back home, but it sounds like they'll have the food available there and would just lunch at home.
That's correct.
Okay, so my only question then is about the coaches and where are they coming from? Are they internal or?
So our learning coaches.
Do we know who they are?
Yes, so our learning coaches are the parents. So that would be in the home. So the parent or an adult caregiver of some sort would be responsible for being that learning coach in the home environment.
And what if they work? What if both parents work then? Does that
so if both
mean that
right.
the student, if the student could get someone else to serve as that?
So if you
and how many hours would that be considered?
So
for someone coming in?
Students that are K-5, they can't be left home alone anyway, so they would be with somebody. And so we would walk through whatever that caring adult is that's providing the service or the care for that child during the day.
Do we have any concerns about the affordability or having, like, that would be a childcare and an educational? Do we have any concerns about parents that would not be able to pay for that, and what do we do? What are their options?
So because it's an online learning academy, it is a virtual learning environment. So there are some inherent issues or concerns around how you would get that learning coach in a home environment. So what we have talked about is that's why we have said it's recommended for 6 through 12. We really want somebody to make sure kids are getting up for their classes, either by a text message or making sure somebody calls them, making sure that they have that teacher-student relationship. Most of the time that's going to be a parent or some other adult in the home. And that's just recommended 6-12. K-5 for students, because they can't be left home alone anyway, they have to be with somebody. So whatever that person is that a parent would already be having for that student, it could be a grandparent, it could be an aunt, it could be an in-home care provider for some students. We'll be working with those adults in that home that were already in the home anyway for that student.
But are we concerned about the people that won't have access? Single parents that have to be at work, that perhaps don't work in jobs that afford them, the childcare. I'm just worried about, I'm concerned about, or curious about how we're organizing this online learning academy to be inclusive and joyful. When I'm a single parent, and it's not an issue anymore. My kids are, grown up. But I'm just curious, like, how I would have handled this as a sole earner,
Right.
Professional. Yet, I just don't know how it would have been done.
So I guess,
and I'm very capable, but I'm just wondering, like, literally,
Right.
financially, and practically.
So
with a 10-year-old or something, and maybe
Right.
a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, you can't
Yeah.
have the 13-year-old watch the 10-year-old, and some kids need to be, it's not a text message that wakes them up.
Right.
It's turning their mattress on top of them or something like that. Cold water.
Yeah, and those are all the things that we're going to talk to the parents about, how they can creatively get supports for their students. I think the question really is, are we going to be providing supports in homes for that? And we will not be. because of the inherent risk and why parents are choosing an online learning academy is because of that risk of COVID and exposure. The other thing is really capacity. So if we have a lot of students who would be home and we would need a learning coach that would be somebody other than that, it would be very difficult for us to continue to do this program. So we will be working with parents and caregivers and whoever's watching the student. So if you are a single parent and you do have an 8-year-old, if your 8-year-old can't go to school, you as a parent have to be able to provide some sort of support for that child regardless. We just want to make sure that we're working with whatever supports the parent is choosing. And then we're happy to work with that person to provide the training, the ongoing coaching. That's why we have focused on family engagement specialists to make sure that we are continuing to partner with our families.
I'm still concerned. I'm satisfied with the answer, but I'm really wondering if we're going to be able to really well serve a small slice of kids who need to be educated at home, and we're going to be leaving, other families behind. It's just a question I have. I'd be interested to get updated further.
Chair, so directors are raising great questions. They're the predictable questions because this is exactly the challenge that school districts are facing. In fact, because there's so many barriers and obstacles to operationalizing a virtual school option for families, they're not doing it, right? In most cases, you're not going to see districts taking this on. We made a conscious decision that despite these barriers, despite these challenges, for the limited number of families who really do need this kind of an option or alternative, what can we do for them? Should we try? And so you've already spoken to a lot of the resources and the variables that, the staffing, we have the dollars, but it's not just that. It's about all these other pieces that you're calling out, which we've also spent a lot of time internally sort of trying to problem solve. But we thought the time and effort that's going into the effort is at least creating a capacity to serve some number of students. And we'll continue to, as we engage with the parents or the caregivers, try to find out what those additional barriers are that we might need to provide a more customized support with. But what we didn't want to be is the big district who doesn't even offer the option. And so, I appreciate staff has put a lot of time into this. This is very helpful for you to continue sharing what you're hearing from families. So if there is a common thread there about another ingredient that we can add to the mix that could be helpful in ensuring that there's not just the access to a program, but also the supports to be able to successfully engage in a virtual option. By nature, it's a more independent endeavor. We're maximizing it so the instruction is more live and consistent and not just part of the day, but throughout the day. And so these are the things that we have, a limited number of additional weeks to try to stand up. The team has spent an inordinate amount of time to get this far, and we wanted to give you this update. And we're definitely taking notes on the things you're bringing up. So continue bringing them to our attention, any of those themes that you continue hearing.
Thank you. Would it be possible then for us to kind of understand and get updated on who we're serving? If we could collect demographic data, so we could be really clear, be able to say we're serving these people, and see if that, not to be confrontational, I'm not being solution oriented here, and I apologize for that, but I am, I'm just concerned by what I heard. So I think that you're saying we need to serve. There are students and families in our district that we do need to serve that need the services, and so this is to help close that gap.
Yeah, I think we'll want to be pretty transparent with directors around, who's signing up. It's not an overwhelming number, but there's a significant enough number that we have the capacity currently to address. And so if there's these other variables or supports where resources should be applied, then that's what we're going to want to keep learning about over the next few weeks.
Yes, and we can't ask about race or disability or other specific factors on an application. Once we do the lottery and we get an acceptance back, we will be able to gather all of that information.
Okay, and we can can we not request that on a voluntary basis at this point, or do we have to wait? I know we can't make decisions based on, ability, race,
I don't believe we can even ask, but I will.
But I know that in some public agencies, you can voluntarily ask any participants to give that information. It means they don't have to give it, but you're gathering it so you can track it and you can make decisions based on the data, the socioeconomic.
Right. So any of our applications through enrollment and transfer, we haven't currently. That is not a practice that we do at this time.
I'm just wondering if we could do it as a voluntary. I know I've worked in some programs where we do ask it, and we ask it voluntarily. Nobody's going to make you, say what your country of origin is, nor will we make a decision, but it helps us when we're providing language services if we know that everybody's speaking, Arabic.
I'm happy to take that question back.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll keep going down the line. Director Brum-Edwards.
I think I have 5 questions because I'm going to be ceding my chief questioner title to Director Green. So I had questions both, and some of these may be for Chief Garcia, whoever's answering the general ones. So I wanted to start by, the first slide was support for in-person full-time instruction this fall, which I was glad to see because it sounds like that's how the majority of our students are going to be served. And so for this, I have a question about that. My assumption is that regardless of the mask mandates or the mask guidance over the next month, we're still planning to that as the primary method of instruction that will flex and will add the sort of layers of protection or whatever the requirements are, but we're solidly aiming at the vast majority of our students receiving full-time in-person instruction.
Thanks for the question. Yes, Director Brum-Edwards, we anticipate a full return 5 days a week in person for the majority of our students.
Okay.
Starting September 1st, which is the first day of school.
Awesome. So then my follow-on question of that is, in the presentation, you mentioned that there'll be a recommendation coming to the board on the August 10th. Is that related to masks or other?
We'll have a set of recommendations that include other mitigation strategies. We get on the board, and I think we were expected to vote on a variety of things, even things we're not experts on. My assumption is that whatever the recommendation is going to be based on, and since healthcare is not our core mission, that it will be based on guidance from healthcare professionals and not any sort of political decision. Absolutely, Director Brum-Edwards. I'm glad you asked that question. And for us as educators, we've been put in these positions where things have been politicized. And so as we share our set of recommendations around public health guidance for our schools, we will ensure and provide rationale that is guided by science and that is guided by our public health officials, both at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. So with that, we are also anticipating to have a work session where you get to have direct conversations and questions with public health officials to make sure that as we share our set of recommendations, that any further questions that you may have on the recommendation can be clarified by public health officials. So we look forward to scheduling that.
Great. I'm glad it's coming in the form of a recommendation based on guidance from healthcare professionals. And then I just had a couple questions about the online academy. And I'll sort of clump them together, but just how many slots are there?
Sorry, is this on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Currently, we have 500 spots available for the first semester. We'll increase that to 750 for the second semester.
So you said there were 15,000 families who chose all virtual in the spring, and moving to the fall with the focus on full in-person instruction, and we know there's all kinds of health and safety supports built into kids coming back to school, but there'll just be 500 slots. So my assumption is that we're going to be overprescribed, which is why there's a lottery. And this is a little bit going down the road that Director DePass started on, because I thought in some of our lotteries for our programs, we were able to do some weighting. And I don't know, I know you can't weight on race, but you can weight on socioeconomic or a variety of other things.
We'll be weighting.
So what are the weighted factors that will?
So the weighted factors will be students with health-related needs, and we have also extenuating medical circumstances. And then the third would be on free and reduced lunch status.
And would some of those be mental health needs as
The
well?
extenuating medical conditions could be mental health reasons.
Okay. Great, thank you. I think that's the questions I have, and I guess I have 2 comments. One, I know that there's some conversations happening in the broader community about special ed students that might have also underlying health conditions, and hey, if you're concerned about your student being exposed, instead of everybody having masks on, they should stay at home. And I hope we try and continue our focus on inclusive education, because for many students, that in-person environment is just as important. So if we don't think of like, this is the solution, that you have to be here because some people don't want a mask or take precautions. And then the other thing is for people who weren't as fast a reader as I was, the presentation is now posted in the board book. So if people want to look at the whole presentation, it's now been posted. Thank you, Roseanne. It was a very useful, lots of information presentation.
Thank you.
It's now online.
Director Brim-Edwards, if I can, Chair, you raised the question that we had anxiety about, 4 to 6 weeks ago. If there's 15,000 kids on CDL, how are you going to recreate that on a virtual online academy? We thought, is it 5,000? Is it 3,000? Is 500 enough to fill the actual need? So as we've started to compare notes with some of the other larger metro districts, they had the same worry. And what they've seen as a pattern or a trend is they were expecting 1,500 to 2,000 potentially, and it's looking like it's actually just in the hundreds. So we won't know until families have a chance to indicate their interest, but I think we're going to be a little bit surprised if the number is much bigger than that.
I'm wondering, that's such an easy math, that's like 5% of the people that were in CDL. And I'm wondering if other districts have a similar kind of a planning number, whether it's, under 10% or whatever, but.
And I think, one of the things we heard when families were choosing to stay in comprehensive distance learning was, the amount of time in school, just what you said, Michelle, about if you work, getting kids to and from. Mm-hmm. So it was a very different animal of what we were offering in hybrid learning than full 5-day. Mm-hmm. So I think for some families, choosing between CDL and full 5-day is a lot easier thing to choose. Yeah. Because I think that was a huge piece. And some kids just didn't want to go back at the end of the school year. It was too much transition. So I think it won't be 15,000, it'll be lower. But the question is, we're just all gambling on how much lower.
We're hearing directors worry. We had the same kind of anxiety initially, but I think we're feeling generally confident. We'll have the capacity for expressed need. Can't say exactly, but we're certainly going to keep you posted.
I can just say I appreciate the time and attention that has been put into thinking through this, and I know you've heard the questions. You've asked the same questions we're asking. You've anticipated.
They're very good questions.
Nothing's original here.
They're very good.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Director Hollins?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple questions. So with not knowing how many is going to register, is there any plans on increasing the capacity if need be? And what would that plan look like?
So we built in an increase of capacity from 500 to the 750 for the second semester because of students who enroll We do get a bigger bump in enrollment when people move after the winter break. We also have students who, for a lot of reasons, may fall into more of a health risk later on in the year. So we've been trying to be really proactive and thoughtful about that. What we do have some capacity is around our PAT contract and the class size limits that we would have. So if we were able to increase that past the 750, we would also have to post for positions. And then we do have ratios for counselors and speech paths and special ed teachers. So it all impacts everything else. And so that's why we built it with capacity to be able to serve students.
So what I'm hearing is that the 500 to 750 is kind of like the hard cap that we would accept, even if it's more kids later on who wants to enroll, they won't be able to.
That would be correct. But I do want to share that it depends on how many. If we have another 500, that would be really hard to accommodate. If it's one or two, we do have some language in our contract that allows for us to pay staff for having additional students in their class.
And Director Hollins, if I may, I think, and Director Burm-Edwards, I think, hinted at this. I think our first and foremost priority is to ensure that the majority of our students return to school in person 5 days a week full time. And I think we've heard that loud and clear from the Board of Education. We've heard that loud and clear from the state officials and obviously from our superintendent. And so while that's going to be, we hope the overwhelming majority, I was going to give a number, but the overwhelming majority, we know that there is going to be a small group of students who, regardless of the mitigation strategies that we put in place, the health and safety mitigation strategies, right, like masks, for example, as we were listening to the CDC and other public health officials. We know that there are some students, regardless of what mitigation strategy we put in place, they will still want to, their families will still want to, for one reason or another, because of a health condition, need to enroll online. And so to the superintendent's point, I think what we're looking at is that ballpark estimate, but because really the idea is that we want our students to come back in person full time, which we know is the one of the best modes of education.
Right, and I get that. I'm just looking at with the new issues that's been coming up recently, that it might or could be a shift in how many families want to choose the online learning. I know when the initial going back to school full time, everything was on a decline, and so now that it's on increasing, it might be other numbers, and I just want to make sure if we're prepared for that. So if it is 1,000 kids that choose to do that because of the health reasons, are we at least looking at planning for that increase if it happens? So that's one thing. Also, I had a question about the budget part of it. What is the cost for this online learning?
So the Online Learning Academy budget currently is around $6 million.
And how much do we have coming from the federal government piece that you guys talked about? How much money do we have in that pot totally?
I don't know the exact figure
Well,
because there's many pots.
There's multiple revenue streams that go into that. I think what might be helpful is to prepare a short and easy to read table for you with each of the ESSER columns so you can see our key strategies, and then you'll see how we're multi-braiding those funding sources. So what might be paying for virtual school might be coming from a few different sources. But I think what you're asking is, what do we have overall available? And if we do find ourselves with a need for more capacity, are there funds available for that? So, fair question.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's a question probably our Deputy for Business and Operations would answer off the top of her head. But we'll catch up with her and get you that information.
Yeah, happy to provide detailed information on the budget.
Thank you. And you mentioned about I think it's the July 30th deadline. I'm just curious on what lead time do we have for parents to get this information about the online learning? And I'm really confused on how to navigate our website, because I'm on here now and I have no clue on how do I go and find out about this program by the website that I'm looking at now.
Okay, so you would go to ola.pps.net. So you could put that in your search engine.
Okay, so would parents need to know that information? If they just went to pps.net?
There's, I would have to look to see exactly where it is, but there is
as a parent, I'm looking, if I go to pps.net about the online learning, how would I navigate the website to have my child, or to apply for my child, especially with the deadline, coming up fast? Also, is there any room to, for the deadline to be extended any? For parents that maybe have not had access or can't find their way to get access to apply for their kids.
So after the enrollment deadline of July 30th, it takes us about a week to go through the applications and then ensure that the criteria is applied, and then we put it through a lottery system. And then we start to notify families, and we also give families 10 days to accept. So if you backwards map that from the time that we have to then provide schedules to students and families and do some of the orientation, especially for the technology components later on in August, July 30th is really pushing it out fairly far. We usually do this in the spring, really. So that's why the July 30th date is there, so that we can make sure that we're getting schedules out to students and having orientation. What we will do is, if we do not have 500 students by July 30th, then we will continue to keep the applications open. And we'll make sure that we send out a communications to all of our families, letting them know that the application is still open. We will then extend it for a few days. At some point in time, though, we do have to shut it down and finalize the lottery so that we can move forward. The applications opened, I want to say it was July 3rd or July 4th, something like that. I could get you a specific date. We did an interest survey back in June. We sent information out to the 15,000 families the middle to end of June, and then opened up the applications. So they've had a while, but we did keep it narrow at first because we really wanted to prioritize students and families who specifically had health-related concerns. And so that's why we did a targeted outreach. And then as we have done that, we have wanted to allow families time to be able to make some decisions on application. And then we also wanted to provide those parent informational sessions. So then on Monday, we opened it up to another group of families, which was all families in PPS.
So you mentioned you narrowed the search at the beginning.
At the beginning, we narrowed it because of just what we talked about before. We just didn't know how big it was going to be with 15,000 students. We really wanted to ensure.
No, I'm sorry. My question is, what did you base those criteria on for that narrowing?
So the criteria, so how we did that is we focused on students who had participated in comprehensive distance learning all year last year. So those were families who were already making a decision to keep their kids home. Okay. And so we wanted to identify those families first.
Okay. We talked about meals and the kids getting meals. Is there something, and I'm just asking because I don't know, about transportation, for kids who don't have access to transportation to go pick up meals?
We We would not be doing that at this time, but what we have done in the past is we have set up some similar ways in which families could pick up meals, either through a drive-through, if they were concerned about coming into the classroom or into the school building. We've also had deliveries sent out on transportation routes. So we haven't finalized all of the ways in which we will make sure that students and families get access to meals. But I can assure you that we will do everything that we can to make sure that kids are fed.
Right. A couple more. What is the staff numbers are we looking at for this program?
So currently, our FTE is about 48 staff. That includes the principal and the administrative, the support staff for the learning management system that we have to do, technology, family engagement. So that includes everybody, including teachers, paraeducators for special ed, school psych, speech paths, special ed teachers. So all the things that you need to support kids.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I can see that Student Representative Weinberg has questions. I also want to make sure that we hear from Director Scott and Director Constam. I'm also watching the clock, so I appreciate everybody's comments. It's going to make our work stronger, but if we could just be mindful of the time.
Yeah, so my first question is about, you said 500 students. How many students is that per grade about, or are we doing it by grade at all?
So we're basing it on our PAT, our Portland Association of Teachers contract. So it's basically it's one class per grade. So that's how we're starting it.
Okay, and then you said we're doing the 4x4 schedule for that. So if you said semester 2 we're increasing enrollment, since we're not doing that for the rest of schools, we're going back to 8 periods all year, how will we move in between those schedules, I guess?
So some students would be moving here from other school districts. The K through 8, that won't impact as much, but we do have a high school counselor that will certainly be working on credit accrual and graduation requirements that will work with that student to make sure that we're meeting the student's needs.
Okay, and then you said there were the 3 qualifications to apply for OLA. You also say on the application that they may have to provide supporting documentation.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't, what happens?
We'll help make sure that they're able to find a resource to be able to do that with our school-based health centers, with our Multnomah County Health Department and our other community providers. One thing that we thought about was if we are going to, say we have 3,000 students that apply, there has to be a way in which we need to make sure that we are first providing a virtual learning for students who absolutely cannot participate in person. And so the one way you could do that is by documentation. So that's what we said is you may have to. We also thought then, what about families who don't have access to a health provider? So we would make sure that we were able to get that access for that family or student.
Okay, kind of follow-up question. So what if they don't have an extenuating medical circumstance, but they checked that off?
So if we're not checking for documentation, we're certainly hoping that everybody is applying and applying with integrity. We're not going to be the application police, though. So if we choose to provide documentation, or choose to ask for documentation, that's only because we have thousands of students and we need to be able to have criteria. If we have more spots than we do students, then we're not going to ask for documentation.
Okay, and then last question, kind of 2 parts. What are the requirements for the at-home learning coach? And then what happens if a family can't provide a learning coach?
So this gets back to the question from Chair DePass. what we're asking the learning coach to do is to help be there to support their child, specifically K-5. For 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, that might be helping them make sure that they're connected, that their headset's on, helping them with getting in and out of a Zoom call here and there. And then to make sure that they are continuing to help the student focus, get movement breaks, make sure that they go out for a walk or whatever the PE or health activity is for that day. And so things like that. The other thing would be to just make sure that they are staying in touch with their teacher.
If they can't provide an at-home learning coach, what happens?
So for 6 through 12, it's recommended because our 6 through 12, 12th grade students can stay home by themselves. Students grades K through 5 can't. So there has to be some adult there if they are staying home. So what we're going to do is we will partner with that adult, wherever that adult is or whoever that adult is in that home environment.
Thank you. Can we move on to questions from Director Scott?
Yeah, thanks. No, I've appreciated the conversation. I don't actually have any additional questions. Thanks.
Director Constam, did you have some questions?
No, it's all been covered. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was a lot of questions. Really appreciate your participation. And I guess we're going to move on. We have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. So, protecting PPS students, staff, and communities in Oregon Department of Transportation's I-5 Rose Quarter project. Director Brim Edwards, would you like to introduce this next item?
Thank you, Chair DePass. So the resolution before us, before the board tonight, is the third or fourth one relating to Harriet Tubman Middle School and the proposed I-5 Rose Quarter Expansion and Improvement Project. There's a lot of history that's recited in the resolution of what the board has done to date. But just a big framing comment is that the original I-5 project basically cut up Albina, the street grids, and the neighborhood, and put the freeway essentially in Harriet Tubman Middle School's backyard. The result of that placement has meant that the air quality outside of the school is of very poor quality, and in 2017, actually 2018, when Harriet Tubman was reopened, the school district invested $10 million to provide clean indoor air, but the outside air is still not of a quality that we would want our youth and students to be breathing. The new proposed I-5 project would move the freeway even closer to the school, furthering the impacts on the air quality and also during the construction on the Harriet Tubman Middle School environment and on students in the community. So as the project planning has progressed, we, as noted before, have weighed in several times with the federal government, with state leaders, with ODOT, about the impact the project would have on Harriet Tubman Middle School community. And throughout that process, we've partnered with Albina Vision Trust to ask that the project be more than a, quote, transportation project, but really be a transformative community project that addresses some of the issues that the original I-5 freeway placement had on the community. So there's a couple of different ways you can look at it, but one of the big questions that has been presented through this project is that this has the ability to unlock a lot of Black economic prosperity through the contracting, and also it has the potential to repair past harm. From a school district standpoint, if the state proceeds, it's pretty hard to imagine that this project would result in anything other than Harriet Tubman needing to be rebuilt in a different location in Albina. So as we move through this project and they've moved the design forward, there's been lots of conversations among key stakeholders. We felt it was important that PPS have a conversation with communities, with the Harriet Tubman community. I want to acknowledge Director of Community Engagement, Shanice Clark, who has led some of these community conversations in late May, early June, and it should be noted that, I think she noted that these really aren't one-time conversations, that we need to be having an ongoing conversation with the community about this and the impact it's going to have on the school site, not just once it had been built, but even during the construction phase. So having participated in about 2 years of discussions now, I think it's important to note that there's not a universal point of view in the community about the project. And it's been somewhat disheartening because at times the project seemed to present choices like you were for Black economic empowerment, or you were for rebuilding Albina, or in support of clean air and healthy environments at Harriet Tubman's Middle School, but you couldn't be for more than one of those things. And it really was like a zero-sum game has been the discussion, or how it's been presented in some ways. And I want to appreciate that Governor Brown realized that this was not a project that ODOT in itself could make into a transformative community project, but that it needed to be elevated above ODOT. I mean, even ODOT, that's the Oregon Department of Transportation, also recognized that. And how do we get at this win-win-win that's not pitting things that we all value against each other, like you just get to pick one of those, but you don't get the other. And so really in the last several days, this focus on what I call the win-win-win, which is a huge economic project in the heart of Albina, but also through the highway caps, having an opportunity to revitalize Albina, and then also to have a healthy school environment at Harriet Tubman Middle School at a location other than its current location. I will say last Friday, Albina Vision Trust and other partners at the table are coming together in a sort of a common point of view that how you would get economic empowerment and a rebuilt Albina, which is great for us. One of the remaining pieces is that we know what this will do to Harriet Tubman Middle School, and so while we've been open with the community about the impacts, that there's be a need for a to rebuild, we consider that an obligation of the state and the federal government, since they were the ones who put the freeway through at the first point in time and did sort of the original harm, but also the through this project would be doing additional harm. So we have a cost estimate on what that would cost. It's about $84 million, and that's without the site. And so this resolution tonight essentially lays out what we believe should happen to move forward, what's the right thing to do for our school community. And so there's 4 resolves in the resolution, but essentially ends with Portland Public Schools leadership demanding that if the state moves ahead with the project, that it commits to create a transformative infrastructure project for historic Albina and to secure the funds to rebuild Harriet Tubman Middle School in a safe, healthy location in historic Albina. Which is, a really strong statement, but it's pretty clear because there's been suggestions we use our bond money or something else, and really this is putting accountability with the group that has caused this issue for Harriet Tubman. So that's the resolution before us, and I will say that I think we have a lot of partners who want to join us in helping make this happen. Albina Vision Trust, the minority contractors, a lot of elected leaders in the region, the Coalition for Black Men. And so we'll have partners, but we're going to need to put pressure. Just because we pass a resolution doesn't mean they're going to come up with $84 million. So this is really the first step in a broader conversation, not just with the state leadership, but also with our federal delegation. So it's a big infrastructure project legislation moving forward at the federal level. So these are all ways in which we can have that conversation and have a unified voice about what we think is important for the students at Harriet Tubman and families at Harriet Tubman Middle School. So that's the resolution that's before us tonight.
Thank you so much for bringing that work forward. I know it's been a couple years, several years ongoing. I appreciate you brought up the fact that the Black community is not monolithic. There are multiple players and multiple perspectives. But I'm really happy to hear that it looks like we're leaning in the right direction. On that note, do we have a motion? Do I have a motion, a second, to adopt Resolution 6354, protecting PPS students, staff, and communities in Oregon Department of Transportation's I-5 Rose Quarter project?
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
Director Green moves. Director Hollins seconds the motion or the resolution to adopt Resolution 6354. All those, Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comment on this?
No.
Is there any board discussion on this?
I just want to say, especially to Julia, but also I know Director Bailey, former Director Bailey, was on I-5, and I remember when we met with ODOT a couple of months ago, and that very vigorous conversation with them. I so appreciate the leadership in this transformative moment to say it doesn't have to be us versus them or this part of the community succeeds, but really saying what is the wrong that has been done historically to this community, and how can PPS as this sort of, we're not the state, we're not ODOT, we're not the federal government, we are unique stakeholders and we have a unique voice. And so with your leadership, and I know many other voices, Director Brim Edwards, to come to this place where we're saying to ODOT, it is unacceptable. It is unacceptable for our students to be treated this way, and we are demanding that you do the right thing, and not just for the school, but for the entire Albina community. I think is remarkable and amazing, and is exactly the kind of direction that we as leaders in PPS are striving for. So thank you for your work on all of this.
Any further comment?
Yeah, this is Director Constam. Sorry, Andrew, were you going to say something? I was just going to say I'm glad to see this coming before us. I formally called on the board to take this action 4 months ago and to make this strong statement to ODOT. So, there have been a series of delays along the way in terms of our engagement with this issue. But we're here now, and better late than never. And it's the right thing to do for our students. And I just want to continue to keep the focus as we engage in these community-wide conversations on our students and on our advocacy for them and what they need and what they deserve. And we have a very specific and important interest in this community conversation, but it really needs to be centered on squarely on our students. So I'm glad that we are drawing a line in the sand about what we expect and what our students deserve.
Thank you, Director Constam. Director Scott, you look like you may have a comment or a question?
Yeah, just really briefly, I also appreciate the resolution and the work that's gone into it. And I particularly, following up on Director Lowry's comments, I particularly like the fact that it puts it in that historical context. So it's not just asking for what we need now, but it's really asking ODOT and the state and all the players to accept the historical wrongs here. And that's part of the restorative justice that governments are going through, some governments, and I think all governments should be going through. And I appreciate the pressure we're putting on ODOT to recognize that there's a moment right now where they can actually perform some of that restorative justice and fix a current issue, but also go back and do some things that fix historical wrongs from decades ago. So really appreciate the resolution. I'll be supporting it tonight.
Thank you. And some of us here in the room actually have been harmed generationally from the putting the freeway in. I wasn't around, but it did impact my family's business, and residents, and yeah, it's a big scar in the community. It messed up the grid that tied this area together, and so I think the potential is so great to not only widen the freeway, which that will happen, but also to create those economic development opportunities that have been missing in our community for a very long time, particularly for Black and brown folks. So, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, Director Hollins.
Thank you. So I have a more of a vested interest in this. A little background. So my dad was born in 1916, and he actually had property in that area. And when they put the freeway in and when they brought in the Memorial Coliseum, he was the one directly affected by literally getting pennies on the dollar for the property over there. So little history of how my part in that, or my family's part in that. But one thing that I appreciate about this resolution one is it's a statement, but I think we have to go further than just a statement, because there's a lot of moving parts to get the other monies to rectify our students that are affected by the pollution. One, for instance, if this was on the west side and they had a pollution issue, our kids wouldn't have been there this long. They wouldn't have been there this long dealing with this pollution piece at any time. So to have a significant amount of pollution that affecting our kids, that's really disheartening that it's been an issue and our kids are still there. And so, I don't think it's just, resolution is great, but I think the community, the school district, the different partners need to put pressure on the legislation in order to get this passed, because there is going to be legislation that has to be passed. There's further dollars that has to get put in to make all this stuff happen. So while the resolution is great, we need action behind the resolution, or it is just another piece of paper. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, for sharing your story. And yeah, I see you and hear you. Anyway, the board will now vote on Resolution 6354, protecting PPS students, staff, and communities. Did we already do this? We didn't quite vote. So protecting PPS students, staff, and communities in Oregon Department of Transportation's I-5 Rose Quarter project. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
Sorry, this is Director Constam. I didn't vote. I'm a yes.
Okay, you're a yes. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. And any abstentions? Student Representative Weinberg, what is your unofficial vote?
Yes.
Your unofficial but important vote. Yes. I was going to remark that, Director Hollins, we have a cadre of 12-year-olds at that school that will show up for climate justice. I've seen it several times. Okay, Resolution 6354 is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Representative Weinberg again.
Voting yes.
Voting yes. Thank you. That was fantastic. Oops, that was fantastic. We don't have any business that was pulled from the agenda. And is there any other business before we adjourn tonight? On time, I might say.
I just had a quick question. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So for the next, as we head into the fall, or get ready for our back-to-school planning, certainly with what's happening in the external environment, the changing health guidance, I'm assuming that like every board meeting will have some sort of update, and there'll be as information comes out. I know there's this feeling of anxiety of we don't know what's happening. So at least from the board's perspective, from my perspective, I'll speak from, it would be great to continue to get those as we roll along towards the start of school. And I think also like the big question is like where are our kids, how are we going to approach where the kids start the school year or in the summer academically so that we're ready to go. I would just appreciate that as we sort of head into the next 2 months, if that's contemplated.
We can make sure that we get a brief update at every at every meeting or every other meeting.
Yeah, so we have two more before the start of school?
We do have 2 more before the start of the school year. Is that something we can?
Well, it's always been our custom to make sure directors are apprised of how we're getting ready to open any school year. This one's a little more unique because, there's a much anticipated full 5-day reopening to attend to, and a lot of other moving parts. Staff, like directors, up through today, we're continuing to digest all of the updates and the shifts and guidance and trying to keep up with all of them. So it's a good thing that by us staying conservative and not making any rash decisions has been sort of the right approach. We also don't want it to be too close to the first day of school because we want families to plan accordingly. But we're seeing no reason why they shouldn't be ready to have their students attending our schools on the first day of school as they would on any other year. We just have to make sure the community is confident that we're putting in place all those health and safety protocols. So you can expect to get more updates on things like the virtual school option that you heard an initial intro about, as well as many other pieces that go into operating the school year. For the next couple of weeks, we're also welcoming back all of our administrators. We'll be in retreat for the next couple of weeks to make sure everybody's very clear on sort of the task in front of us. And so you can rest assured that you'll learn more about all of that as well.
Thank you. I think that's concluded our business for tonight, and we are adjourned.